We're going to talk about the listing presentation and listing consultation. All right, are we ready to do that?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to share my screen, so just bear with me a second and then we'll dive into the conversation. I'm hoping as we go through that we can have a interactive conversation. So if I'm talking about something, if you have a question, I don't always, the way my computer's set up, I don't necessarily get to see that you have your hand raised or something. So don't be shy and just say, you know, I have a question. All right, and we'll, I'll let you know whether we need to hold the question because we're going to get there or whether we can answer it right there. Is that fair? You guys are a great group. Thank you very much. All right, let's see if I get to the right place. All right. All right, you seeing my screen? Okay, does everybody see completing the listing presentation on their screen?
Yes. Now,
Thank you guys, I appreciate it. All right, so what I wanted to do is take a moment and kind of, you know, step back and think about this in the overall process. So I want you all to be thinking about, okay, so I've gotten a lead on the phone, a potential seller, whatever that is, because it's a for sale by owner. It's somebody in your sphere, somebody that you know who's looking to sell their house. It could be someone that their house expired and you contacted them. So you've set an appointment. What I do recommend when you set an appointment is give yourself a little breathing room if possible, especially in the beginning. So let's say it's Monday and I'm speaking with the seller and they say, yes, I'd like you to come over. And what you may do, and let's say it's Monday morning at 11 o'clock. Well, I'd probably, you know, we'd be like, okay, I'm available. And you have to kind of decide, like, so do you need, like, can I come over Tuesday? Can I come over Monday night? That's something you'll figure out with the seller, but time is important and you need a little bit of time for prep, but you also want to have a sense of urgency because they may be interviewing other agents and you don't want to miss out. And that's why once they've agreed to meet with you, what you want to go through is some of the pre-qualifying questions. Does anybody know, and I'm going to stop share for a second, does anybody know what pre-qualifying questions are when you're determining how serious the seller is?
Yes.
Okay, so give me some ideas of what's a pre-qualifying question. What do you want to know when you're pre-qualifying?
The why, like why do they want to move? How soon do they want to move? Where are they moving? Do they own any money? Do they have any outstanding debt? Do they know of anything that's going to prevent them from selling? Do they have to sell before they buy if they're buying a new house?
That's absolutely part of it. What else?
Are they oh no, that's not pre-qualifying.
That's buyer. What
Yeah.
else? What else? What else? What do we want to know? I mentioned it before. They're letting you come in to interview. Could they possibly be interviewing other agents?
Okay.
Okay. You want to, that's one of the questions that sometimes is hard to lean into, but it's better off knowing. I've actually lost a few listings because I was too shy to ask that question. And if I had known, I would have positioned my conversation differently. So it's not bad to ask, just so you understand. And a lot of times, if it's somebody you know, it's very possible that they're only interviewing you. It actually turns out that, I mean, I forget what the actual percentage is, but it's probably like over 80% of sellers actually only interview one agent. But if you know ahead of time, right, exactly. So if you're good, you could be going in there like, I got this, right?
Yeah.
On it. So if you know ahead of time, because there's also a script that says, even if they are interviewing someone, if they like you, you can say, would you like me to call the other agents and let them know you're listing with me? So there's a whole script there. Okay. So pre-qualifying, understanding, also asking them, who else are the decision makers? Because if you're going to have a meeting, who else do I need to know who is there, right? So if there is a significant other, a spouse, a family member, maybe it's an estate. So all the siblings have to get together, you know, or maybe it's like, you know, there's a widow but the children, adult children need to be involved, right? So understanding decision makers are important, and also getting an idea about what they think that, like, do they have a price in mind of the house? Because you start to understand, like when I've asked that question and you say like, so how did you come up with that number? And they'll say like, oh, I looked on Zillow, you know, whatever. And, you know, the thing is that and so Max, I know that you're giggling. And so you have to hold that in when you're talking to them, right? Especially if you're on a Zoom with them. And you have to say, okay, good. You know, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about pricing when we're together, right? So when you're in a pre-qual, what you're doing is you're not judging them, good or bad. You're just like, okay, we're going to talk about that. All right. And then I also, so you want to know those things. And so the next part of it is, and I'm going to go back to my slide presentation, is once you've gone through the pre-qual, you kind of understand. And I will be honest with you, I don't always go through every single question on the pre-qual, but I get an idea so that, as Elizabeth said earlier, I know their motivation. I know whether they're going to list with another, like if they're going to talk to another agent. I get an idea of pricing. I may or may not ask them to describe their house. I typically, actually, let me take that back. I do ask them, whether I ask them on the phone when I'm talking to them or I do a follow-up email. I need to know what, like the basic information about their house. How many beds, how many baths? Is there a fireplace? Is there a garage? Is there anything else special I need to know about it? What style is it? Because I'm going to be doing a competitive market analysis, which is the CMA. So I want to understand kind of some of the key points, you know, if anything's been renovated. So I do want to ask them that. And a lot of times I will actually ask them that in an email as a follow-up, but you can decide what you're comfortable with. Once I do the pre-qual, one of my last questions is, what's your best email? Because I'd like to send you a little information before we meet, because I'm very respectful of your time. And that's where, and you might have heard this before, there is a pre-listing packet versus a listing packet for the listing consultation. So I'm going to show you the pre-listing packet, and then really what makes the difference between a pre-listing packet and a listing consultation really comes into the fact of your pre-listing packet is your sales and marketing. It's your a little bit of bio about you, about KW, your value proposition, what you're going to bring to the table is why choose you. And then the listing consultation has that packet, but it also includes would have been doing a market analysis, giving them a market overview. And that becomes, quite frankly, a lot of the crux of the conversation. And then of course, to go to the listing consultation, arrive on time. I usually arrive like 5 to 10 minutes early. I just kind of park down the street. And then like a minute before I'm supposed to be there, I walk up to the door. So like on the dot, I can say hi, you know, and when I go to the door, I ring the doorbell and then I step back so that I'm giving the person some space, and then they invite me in, and we then start the conversation. So any questions about what I just said before we go into more detail?
No.
Does it make sense? All right. And the other thing that I probably didn't say out loud is part of this process, and even whether you are a first time doing it or you're an experienced agent, practice before ahead of time so that you're very comfortable in how you're going to present the numbers, how you're going to present the market, how you're going to present your listing packet. So it's not just about making one, it's about figuring out how you're going to deliver it. And, you know, I'm in my 4th year now as an agent. I continually evolve my package, as well as also how what my repertoire is, what my scripting is. So that I'm looking to always hone and improve my skill. So, and you can do that also with, another, certainly like one of the coaches, but also another agent. Always good to have a buddy agent that you're there for each other. And that you can practice and bounce off ideas with one another. Make sense?
Yes.
All right. Has everybody found that buddy yet? Okay. Well, you got time. So the best thing is you're plugged in. So as you get to know each other, you start seeing each other regularly. On a lot of people I work with are people that I originally met on a Zoom or in a training class, and we ended up starting to talk, and then we decided that we were going to practice scripts together, or we were going to practice a listing presentation, or we were going to work on marketing plans. So, we held each other accountable. Yes.
How do you recommend we choose our buddies? Is it someone that's at the same level that we are, somebody that's above, that has more experience, or it doesn't matter?
It really depends upon what you're doing. If you're talking about putting your listing presentation together, or your buyer presentation together, I would pick another buddy agent that, whether they were here for a long time or whether they just started, if you both need to create that package, work on it together.
Okay.
It's always great to get advice of a more seasoned agent. So the difference is, like, if you're working on your comparative market analysis to come up with a price, you probably want a more seasoned agent that could actually validate your numbers and give you an idea, right? So it's situational, Elizabeth.
Okay, thank you.
And that's the approach I took. I actually had a great buddy when I first started, and she and I, it's called R&D, rip off and duplicate. So what happens is we came up with ideas together. We shared the best amongst us. We also saw other people's presentations, and then we created our own. And then we practiced. That's where we did our practicing together of presenting it, and even like working on CMAs together. So, it's great to have that buddy. So I encourage you guys to start seeking out those buddies. And over time, you also will find yourself talking with people where you may be a newer agent, but you're lined up with a more seasoned agent because the two of you click and you help one another. So, KW is all about helping one another. Okay. So I'm going to show you where there's a template, and we're going to go there in a second. There's also this great video. So there's a template to actually create what is your pre-listing packet, and that's on All in KW. There's also a great video that's listed here. I can give this deck to you guys after our session if you're interested. You'll just put your interest in the chat, and I will then send it to you. So just let me know. And I'll give you the email address to send it to a little bit later. Let's see. So the thing is that I'm going to show you this template. It's really about personalizing it and making it your own. So let me stop sharing for a second. Has anybody started working on their listing packet yet? Okay, Elizabeth, Jennifer, great. All right, no worries. If you haven't, don't worry. This is not a test. It's just more curiosity. So being here is great that you're plugged in, and now you have an opportunity to now work on it. And I will tell you, like my first year, I probably worked on mine and I updated it like 3 or 4 times, because after I used it, and then I actually went on a presentation, I said, oh, let me tweak this, right? So you get better and better, and then over time, you're going to make it your own. But let me show you. Yes, Elizabeth.
So you do keep the presentation that you put together. You only leave with them the CMA?
Say that one more time.
Do you keep reprinting the presentation? Like, do you leave it with them, or do you just take it back with you?
Well, here's the thing is, you have to be really careful what you leave so I prepare. So we're going to talk about that, about like sending them a pre-listing packet. I never leave my CMA, because unless they've agreed and signed that night, that's proprietary information. I'm only going to give details to a person that's going to sign up with me.
Okay.
All right, so you have to be, this is one of those things where you don't want to give away all the keys to the car because they can actually use it. FSBOs have actually, for sale by owners, have actually used it and then put the house on the market themselves. There's other things where you'll see another agent all of a sudden comes up with your pricing, your strategy, and it's because the seller shared it with them.
Got it.
So listen, we all have those moments. It may or may not happen to you, but it's like, you know, if you sign with me, then I'm happy to leave all this. If not, you're keeping things at a very high level. Does that help?
Signing means like signing the documents where they're gonna list with you, like confirming that they're gonna list with the XYZ agent. You're okay leaving the information over there. Am I understanding this correct?
So Gopi, are you talking about the listing paperwork?
Yes, the CMA and the other things, if I have to leave it by the seller or
I
somebody.
do not leave I would never leave a CMA with the seller unless they're signing with me. So we're going to talk about that, how that conversation looks. What I do is, I send the pre-listing packet first, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. What I bring to the appointment, and you can see a red folder here, you know, at KW, you can choose whether it's white, red, or black, or you can have these bound. It's really your choice. I use the KW folders. This one's a little messy right now, but the idea is what I do is, even though I've emailed the pre-listing packet to them, I bring a hard copy of the pre-listing packet. I bring the documents that they are supposed to sign, and I bring the market information. I do not hand them a packet when we sit down. Everything is in front of me. I hand out information as needed. And honestly, when I go through a packet, if I want to go to a page, I sit across the table from them, or like catty corner, and I use my packet and I point and I go to the page that I want to go over with them.
Awesome.
Because do you remember being in class and you ever have the person where it's like you're on page 2 and somebody else goes to page 10 and then disrupts the whole class?
Yes.
Those are your sellers, especially if there's more than one person that you're dealing with. Sally's on page 2. Jack is on page 5. And in the meantime, you're frazzled because you're trying to balance both of them. So I like to stay, part of being in these listings, when you're meeting with people, you want to stay in control.
I went to Staples and I purchased one of those like sleeves that you insert the pages and you just flip them, sort of like a presentation folder.
I'm going to go to, and again, you know, each one of us will have our own style of what we do. So I want to show you how I got, first of all, can you see my screen? And you should be able to see, it says up in the corner, WTL, generic listing presentation.
We can see, Kathy.
Yes, you can. Good. Okay, good. All right. So where I got this was, so there's a site called All in KW. In All in KW, I actually went into more. I happen to be, I'm in the Tenafly office, so I use Tenafly resources. And I clicked on that, and you can see here, once I click on Tenafly resources, what comes up are these different choices. And so this actually is a great, like, point you in the right direction. Here's where the presentations are. And there is a PowerPoint. This is generic. It's a PowerPoint listing presentation and also a buyer consultation packet. And so what I did was, what I have over here is, this is the listing packet. And this is what I would call the pre-listing packet, because what you're doing is, again, the difference between a listing packet and a pre-listing packet, as far as I'm concerned, is we're talking about giving them an overview, and then we're bringing along that full listing packet includes the CMA and market information. So you can see here, custom consultation prepared for you. What I like to do is either I will go on Google if I don't have time, and I'll actually take, a screenshot of their house. If I have the time, I'll actually will drive by their house and take a current photo. So like one day I had a listing presentation, the day before it had snowed. So actually with the picture of their house was after the snow. So they knew it was really fresh. So it's, that extra little touch that lets people know. And then what this does is, the way this format is, it talks about to the seller what your needs, like your needs are the most important things for us. Here's what the process is. Here's my app of how we can sell your property and also how buyers can look at and find your property. And then here's some of the different things that I do for market, to market your properties. And you want to make it your own. I actually bring in my own app. I take a snapshot and I pull in a picture of my own app so they see my name on it. And I put in my website, a snapshot of my website. I put in a picture of my Facebook page, your open house strategy. And so then it's got a promise in here. If you were somebody that already had some awards, you could have that in there. If you don't, you take the page out. This is a promise, and then a bottom line, which is basically, this is how I'm going to get you to the closing table. But the idea here is to give them the concept of this pre-listing packet is to give them a little bit of background. I like to put a letter in that actually is a letter from me to the sellers, which is a generic letter. Every seller gets the same letter, but what it does is it talks about my value proposition. How am I going to do business with them? So if you haven't written your value proposition or written your bio, it's time for you to think about that, because what you want to be like, listen, I know that, selling a house is one of the biggest emotional and financial decisions that any one of us makes. My job is to really, my clients are number one, and my job is to get the most money for my sellers and to provide the least amount of stress in the process. Okay, so I'm just making that up, but like understand where I'm coming from in terms of what are you going to offer? What makes you different? It's like a little bit of a warm and cozy letter, but on the professional side, right? If you have testimonials, put in a testimonial. And that could be, I realize you haven't done real estate business, but if you have like somebody that from your prior work life that like could be like give you a little statement that says like, oh my God, this person's amazing to work with. You were in a service industry before. Service is service. Understand, we happen to sell houses, but what is this business really about? This is a people's business. Max, you have a question.
Yes, Kathy. Did you write your bio yourself, or did you hire or pay someone to write it for you? Because I know some bio are very like professional and very good looking, and I want to avoid making any mistakes or sounding a little bit silly. Or so what would you recommend?
Honestly, I mean, listen, with real estate. And the way we are at KW, we, it's called red light, green light, which means that like spending the least amount of money or no money to get things done before you start doing business. So I wrote my own. I did have, what I did was I went out and I researched other people's bios to get an idea of it. And I actually asked my like team leader, like, do you have a recommendation of who has a great bio, type of thing. So I went out and I looked at a few different websites. So it's like within your office, if you went out and looked at like some of the top agents, you might be able to take a look at their bios. I use that kind of as inspiration.
Okay.
But when you think about a bio, your bio is a little bit about your background, and your background as it would help to say like how it would be a good bridge to real estate, and why it makes you like how you like your life has now brought you to this place, because and then you start thinking about, well, now what's my value proposition? What type of service am I going to provide? You know, and it could be, I'm with you every step of the way.
Okay.
You know, it's
Perfect.
and you start like, you know, playing around with things, and, you know, I'm here for you. You want to make sure people understand that you recognize their people. They're not a transaction. When you see their faces, you may see some dollar signs, because we do know we get a commission if we sell that house, but ultimately it's people, and we're affecting people's lives.
Right. Okay.
And
Thank
we
you.
are, you know, like I said, this is one of the both emotional and biggest financial decisions for people. So,
Right.
you know, so does that help you, Max?
Definitely. Yes.
And
Yeah,
there's
I was kind of already looking at others agents'
Yeah.
bio, and I just wanted to make sure before I write mine.
Yeah.
But yeah, definitely. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Well, and I will tell you, Max, the other thing is the way, I mean, my process when I write is I like to jot down a lot of stuff. And then I just write like a bunch of stuff. And then I step back, and then I, you know, move it into the final document, because
Right.
I need to just get it out on the table, all my thoughts. And then I
Right.
kind of, right. So it's a little bit of a process. So give yourself permission. There's also a great video called Snap. And it's about, and this woman, and I can't think of her name right now. I'll send you guys the link. It's about a half-hour thing, but it's really well done. And what it does is it talks about, you know, this is about your elevator pitch. This is about like your value proposition. And the difference with Snap is in your elevator pitch is typically about how you're going to get your job done. In Snap, what it does is it says, I get results because of how I get my job done. It's kind of the gist of it. And then it's like the end of Snap is, who do I need to know? Who do you know that I need to know? Because it's also a great way to, like, you know, if you're at a cocktail party, you know, and having a simple real estate conversation, it's like, well, so who do I need to know that, you know, needs me, right?
Right.
So there's some resources out there to inspire you. Okay. All right. So going back to this generic one, I would go through it, and it's really important that you feel authentic with it. So we've given you a generic one because it's generic. And this is a PowerPoint. It's meant to be edited. So taking out pages, adding pages, modifying the words in here so that they sound like you. You know, on marketing, if you're going on a listing presentation and you have no intention of spending money on postcards for the seller, and I don't spend money on just listed postcards. You know, if I was talking for a higher price, I would maybe, you know, $750 and above, I guess I would spend money on a postcard. But in most cases, I'm not putting, my main focus is social media when I'm advertising. So I don't want to promise something and then not deliver. So if you're not going to do it, this is where you then tweak for that individual, because you don't want to overpromise and somebody thinks they're getting a postcard and then you're like, no, you're not worth it. Right? Again, red light, green light. So it's like, you have to decide based on like the money, like, is that worth it? Are you going to get a bang for your buck? I mean, basically by going on, when you're in the sweet spot, let's say you're selling houses between 400,000 and 500,000, even 600,000, you're in a sweet spot in most towns, right? Where we live. So by being on the MLS, by doing an open house, by doing some social media, typically buyers come to you. So like I spend the money, and it's more for me than for my seller. I spend the money when it's sold because I want to be able to get more clients. But I don't want to tell their seller that because I'm using them at that point, right? So that doesn't feel very good.
Question.
Yes,
How
Jennifer.
about the staging and the photographer?
Yeah, so great question. So, you know, when it comes to the staging piece of it, you know, you have the ability. So I keep staging in there no matter what client that I have, because when you think about staging can be as simple as they have to clean the house and declutter the house. That's staging, right? When you're staging a house, you're getting it ready. What you're doing is you're trying to remove the seller's personal effects or minimize them, because when a buyer walks in, you want them to envision themselves in the house. So removing personal photos, you know, too many knickknacks around, you know, you want people to envision what their family's portrait's going to look like, you know, so like countertops clean. Like, so behind me, you can see my countertop. I wouldn't have all that stuff on my house if I was selling my house, and I would tell my seller, put that away. Okay. So it could be, that's free to give that advice. So we have that in our ability to walk around a house. Like if they have too much furniture in a room, sometimes you have to say to them, like I said to my seller that I just had recently, she had 3 big pieces of furniture in her living room, which made her living room really tiny. And I said, all right, 2 of the pieces need to go. Put them in the garage, put them on the front porch. I don't care where they go, but they need to go. Because when we take photographs, we want to make sure people can see the size of the room, because she had a nice size living room. Same thing for her dining room. She had too much furniture in there. We got her to remove the furniture that was unnecessary, because you want people to see the benefit. And those are all free suggestions. Didn't cost her any money. Then if they are someone who wants to spend some money, typically you can bring a staging person in. It's usually on us as the listing agent that we pay for the consultation, but the seller would pay for the staging if they decide they want to spend money. And it's not our job to tell them how much that is. If they would like a consultation, we could bring somebody in. And then what happens in most staging companies, they can give suggestions, but they don't do anything. So all you're paying is the consultation, or it may be modified things that they'll do, or it's a very big, like, you know, the more luxury houses where they totally restage. So it can vary.
And also, Kathy, I think there is some companies that can stage virtually, like you take pictures and they can edit everything in case, you know, they cannot stage for some reason, or they cannot afford, or you cannot afford. So I remember, I don't know the name of the company, but I remember we had a presentation and it was actually very impressive.
Yes.
And they can even make 3D plans with the staging. So it's pretty amazing.
Yes, and I think, Max, that you're right. There are some things you'd have to determine the photographer and guess how much that's going to cost, because it's going to come out of your commission. So you're negotiating your commission up front, but remember that's coming out of your pocket. And again, is that house worth it? So, you know, I have a house that is going to close in a couple of weeks, and you know, it's a $600,000 house, but it needs work. We got the seller to declutter and clean it up, and like I said, remove a few pieces of furniture. But other than that, when we got photography, what I did do is, like, so to your question about photography, Jennifer, we always have a professional photographer come in. There's very cost-effective people, and you know, you can spend a little, you can spend a lot. You know, when my repertoire is photos and floor plans, because most people want to know floor plans, and it doesn't cost that much money, and it goes a long way. People really appreciate that. All right, I want to go back to my PowerPoint because I don't want to miss key points. So please go out. It's time. If you haven't done your presentation, it's time to start working on it. If you've worked on it, go back and really take a look at it, because then if you're happy with what it says, then you need to start practicing. Bless you. So the other thing you need to do as you're prepping,
Thank you.
is, you're welcome. Where you're prepping is you're going to, of course, now we're moving to DocuSign. So you're going to create the room in DocuSign, because you need to make sure that you've got all the paperwork in there. You've set up a room for your client and the name of their house. And even though you're not sure you're getting the listing, you want to go in with the idea that you've got this already set up so you can move quickly if they say yes to listing the house. And there is some minimal paperwork that needs to be signed. So you're going to go in, you're going to set yourself up as the listing agent, and then you're going to insert the right forms, and then you're going to fill them out as much as you can based on the tax record. And you can also handwrite things in, because this is when you're going to talk to a seller. And this happens to be a listing of the paperwork that you're going to need. Now, I will tell you, at a listing presentation, I typically will bring copies of all these things. I don't necessarily leave with them. It depends upon, I like to get the agreement signed that they are going to work with me, but I don't want to overwhelm them. So it depends upon, I determine based on the seller how I'm going to feed them the slides, feed them the paperwork. So this is the seller's loop, or what would be a room in DocuSign of the documents that have to bring in. The listing agreement is the agreement that the seller is agreeing. That's the contract between you and the seller that you are listing and going to represent them as their listing agent. Talked a little bit about the packet. And there's a lot of videos on the BCP KW site. Just before I move forward in terms of the actual, like, what does that meeting sound like? Any other questions or comments with what I've said so far? Are we good?
Yes.
I just have a question, sorry.
That's okay.
I wanted to know if you were going to email your presentation to us?
Yes.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
Yes, if you can. Yeah, no problem. Actually, what I'm going to ask you to do, hold on one second. I never remember the name of my coaching email. If you can, I'll put it in the chat, but it's bcpcoaches@kw.com. Just please say that you're interested in please send me an email saying that you'd like the presentation, and I'll send it after.
And can you repeat that one more time? BCP?
BCP, so Bergen County Partners, the word coaches @kw.com.
Got it, thank you.
You're welcome. And I'll be happy to send you, I have a handout that has the pre-qualifying questions on it, and I'm happy to send the PowerPoint to you, okay? All right.
So what exactly we have to do, we sent out your email or BCP Bergen County Partners, and that's what we're going to receive our recordings or presentation?
You'll receive the presentation, yeah.
All right, thanks.
Yeah. You're welcome. Okay, let me get back to this. Oops, sorry, wrong thing. My computer's out of control. Here we go. All right. So I want to just go back to this because it's really important when you think about it's now the time has arrived. You've gotten out of your car. You've got your pre-listing packet. You've already sent them the pre-listing packet. You had the pre-qualifying conversation. It's now 7 p.m. and you're going to meet your seller. And you know that the husband is also going to be there. And so now be on time, be prepared, and you really want to understand what's happening, understanding the neighborhood. And you're part of what you're doing before you're trying to sell yourself and what you can do for them is you're building rapport. So it's really important that you're building rapport and that they understand that what you come to the table on is to be a partner in getting their house sold, and that you're really more of a consultant than you are you're not trying to sell them. you're trying to guide them. So you want them to understand that you're going to give them the information they need to make the right decisions. So this is where you had the pre-qual, you understand their motivation, you understand kind of what price that they want. You come to the door, you say hello, and you say, may I put my things down in the dining room table? And then you're going to say to them, I'd love to take a look at the house really quickly before we sit and talk. And they'll say, sure. And if they say, I'd like to come with you, you say like, listen, I would love to just do it through the eyes of the buyer, if I can. And if they insist, then just be like, of course, I'm happy to have you take me through. Just, we want to do this quickly because I want to see it just in a very objective view. And I'll be very happy later on when you list with me to go through, because I really want to know your most favorite parts of the house. So you just want them to understand this is like going to take 5 minutes, not even. And what I do is most sellers are fine with that. And I give them actually the worksheet to fill out. And the worksheet basically is some facts about the house so that they go through that while I'm looking at the house, so that when I sit down with them again, it also becomes something that we can talk about together, because I'm going to need that when I put the house live on the market. So honestly, understanding, like I always go through like a little agenda. I set things up. Here's what we're going to kind of talk about tonight. And I want to validate motivation and expectations so that everything's very clear. What you're then doing is when you're speaking with them, what typically will happen is once you've seen the house, what you'll do is you're letting them know that you want to talk about, and I'm going to take this off for a second because there's a lot that you can ask them, but I want to step back. I like to talk about give them a little bit of an overview of the market. And so I bring a page from MLS and I'll show you that page. I also then have my individual comps. But I start with the market overview. And again, I always kind of share it with them so that I'm guiding them to see. And my market overview includes the active, sold, and under contract homes in their area. So I'm just going to bring one up as an example, just so you can see what that looks like. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes.
So I'm gonna, let me share my screen so you can see what I'm doing. All right, you should see, I'm hoping, are you seeing MLS on the screen or not yet?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, hold on. Okay, now you should see it.
Yes.
Okay. Everybody's got access to MLS?
Yes.
All right, so I mean, what I do when I do this is I'm doing a search. So I'm actually going to bring up a pre-saved search, but what I would do is I would do a property search and I would put for the town, and I would put in for the, so let me just show you an example of one. This is something from a prior, this was a prior listing consultation that I went on. So what I did was I put in, it's Bergen County. The house happened to be in Englewood Cliffs. This had been an expired, so the house was between $1.2 million and $1.5 million was kind of the range I was looking at. And I bring in active, I bring in under contract, and I bring in sold. Because this was higher priced, I brought in 12 months. Typically, when it's something more in like the $300,000, $400,000, $500,000, $600,000 price range, I will do the last 3 months. And if I don't see enough activity, then I'll go 6 months. But a lot of times those houses move so quickly, I want to make sure that I've got the information that I need. And then when I do my search, Can everybody see what comes up on the screen? So it defaults always to the full report. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go in and I'm going to choose the customer summary report. Oops, and you have to check off. I check off everything. And you see how, what I like about this summary, do you see how it gives an average? So it's got 4 listings here, but it's giving me an average price and also an average days on market. Now it happens to be that this one house is really skewing those numbers. So that's where you would be looking at it and saying like, listen, this one, like take this one out because the other 3 are all within 2 months. You know, you've got 600 contract. And again, here's kind of what's happening, the average price. And then here's the one, these are everything that sold in the last year. And I also like to bring expired and withdrawn in because I just want to see if there's like what's happening in the market. And what I do is when I pull this in for a CMA, I'm also pulling in, normally I may narrow it so that if it's a type of house or the number of bedrooms. Well, right now this one doesn't have it narrowed with the number of bedrooms, etc. But remember I said earlier how you would ask them about the number of bedrooms and baths so that you can fine tune that CMA. But this is kind of giving them a broad blush of what's going on in their town. And then what I do is I actually bring a copy of the map listing because everybody likes to see where their house is and what's happening with activity within their area. So what this basically does is it takes those 38 matches and now it plots them. And now I can see, so if the house, let's say that their house, I'm just making this up, let's just use house number 1, you know, so like this section over here. So let's say their house for sale was going to be over here. Now I'm kind of pinpointing the activity. There's a couple of things on the market, so that's your competition. There's a couple of things that sold. There's something that expired. So I'm helping them to get a broader brush of what's going on. Plus I'm educated about what's happening in the town or the neighborhood. I'm educating them so that they understand. And then we go back to the price they were looking for. And I always give a price range. I do not give a specific price. You always want your seller to make the decision of what price they'd like to go through. Your job is to really help them understand the risk and reward of depending upon how they price, and you tie it back to motivation. They price too high, it's going to take longer to sell. Pricing with competition, if there's a lot of competition, how do buyers perceive value? When you look at something, let's use that, like the car example. Got a car that's got fancy wheels and an amazing stereo system. And then I've got a car in one dealership and it's at $40,000. And then I go to another dealership and that same car is $30,000. Which dealership am I going to buy from?
30,000.
The one that's 30,000 with the most features and benefits, right?
Right.
If the other dealership maybe has another car similarly, but it doesn't have those fancy things, but it's now at $25,000, maybe I don't care about those fancy things so much. So now I'm okay because I'd rather have $5,000. So it's the same type of thing. Same type of thing with pricing. So you're helping them to understand if they want to be like in the competition, do they want to be ahead of the line or at the back of the line? Do they want to just blend in? Do they want agents to come in and use their house to sell another house? Or do they want to be the house that everybody wants? And then of course, there's the pricing a little bit lower than market. And that's where you have to move fast and you're really looking to create a multiple offer situation. So there's strategies that can be employed.
I have a question.
Yes.
Are we responsible for looking at the tax records to confirm the amount of rooms and bedrooms? Because I run into a situation where a homeowner had made an expansion. They did an additional bedroom, but they never got permits. They never updated the tax records. How do you handle that?
Well, there's a couple of different things. So it's a good question, Elizabeth. So first of all, what I do is when I have a potential to go on a listing or I have the listing, I actually reach out to the tax office and I request a property tax record card. And that actually shows you what's included in what the house is being taxed on. And I also ask for an Oprah report about any open or closed permits, because I want to know if there's any open permits that we have to worry about.
Okay.
So I have an example now where I have a house where it's on the tax record, and originally this house, when it was sold in 2016, had 1 bath. Now, when I went to go see the house to list it, it has 2 baths, and the property tax record only showed the 1 bath. So, you know, the town needed to update that. They did have their bathroom, that second bathroom permitted. It was just a timing situation. But knowing is important. And again, it's not your job to fix it. Your job to make sure that the seller is doing what they need to do, which is getting permits for things, because what's going to happen is that they're going to have a problem later on.
So in that situation, because it did happen, they did an additional, and they did an addition and they never got the permit. Do I just walk away from it? I mean, I didn't get the listing, but in the case that, you know, like I were to be offered the job to list, what do I do in that situation?
You have a conversation with them and say, you know, listen, to sell this house, you're going to have to make sure that you need to get a permit for this, you know, extension.
Okay.
And if they refuse to, then yeah, I would say, I don't think that I can, you know, I'm sorry, but I don't think I can work with you. If they're doing something that doesn't feel right and is putting you in jeopardy, putting themselves in jeopardy, is creating a situation, whether it's immoral, unethical, illegal. Sometimes we have to say, I'm sorry, I can't help you.
Yeah.
Most sellers, because honestly, like I know there was a listing I went after and it turned out that the guy who had been a contractor never got a permit. Well, he ended up having a $6,000 fine that
Wow.
had to be paid, because when the home inspector came in, he saw the extension, and the guy should know better. He's a contractor. And so he had to pay $6,000. It would have cost him a little bit of money to have that permitted when he first did the job.
Yeah.
I have a
So you
question.
can't really, in this day and age, it's really hard to feign innocent or naivete, because everything's online. Everybody can make a phone call, right?
Right. Yes.
So, Carrie,
Hi, I know I'm hopping on late. I was on the scripts class and it went way over. But I wanted to find out about the flood zone issue too, because you know how they changed all the maps recently, and the towns didn't notify everyone, or the towns don't know. So I had a house that I had a buyer, and I ran the insurance to see if it was in the flood zone or whatnot. And then by the time it was over, the flood map had changed and the town didn't notify anyone. So I guess when she went, we just had Ida, and then she went to file the claim. I already closed the deal, and then she was calling me up, and I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like I did what I was supposed to do.
you're right. And the thing honestly is that we have to be careful, because, you know, once the deal is closed, it's like, you don't want to be like, sorry, not my problem.
Exactly.
But what I actually have done, like where I've had issues, I refer them to their attorney.
Okay.
I redirect them to their attorney, you know, to get counsel.
Yeah, because I said you could never have gotten a mortgage even, you know, I ran the insurance thing, and then they wouldn't have been able to get a mortgage. And now they changed it like overnight. And I'm
Yes, that would
noticing
be
it's all over
perfect.
Bergen County now, and I'm looking things up.
Thank you so much.
Right. I would say, you know, it's, you know, if you're post-close, you're already closed,
Mhm.
I would point them to their attorney.
I know, I feel terrible.
Well, and you can say that, I mean, in terms of like saying like, oh my God, you know, but it's also, but you can't really do anything. I mean, you can always, those type of things I'd also say is like those type of situations, always go to your broker, let them know the situation, so your broker's aware. This broker, you know, your broker is like ultimately any business that we do, it's still, even though our names are signed on it, our broker overall, it's really their listing. It's really their transaction, right? So just making your broker aware, here's the scenario.
Okay. Yeah, I don't think that's anything's gonna come out of it, but they just said something to me, and I felt bad, so when I looked it up, it did change.
right.
but just recently. You
Well,
know,
and there's not, I mean, you can't, you know,
I can't do anything about it. I did notice all over Bergen County that the flood maps are changing rapidly.
yeah, well, and I think from Ida, that they did talk about
Yes.
FEMA changing that, so. All right, so, I know this might have been a whirlwind hour together. Did we, was it productive, helpful? Give you a little bit more to think about with getting yourself prepared for a listing presentation?
Yes, you gave us homework.
I did give you homework. Actually, you know what? And I appreciate you saying that, because what I would say to you is I'd love to see your listing presentation.
I was
So,
going to ask, yes.
please put it together. I actually worked with an agent today. She created her listing presentation. We actually had a similar conversation that we just went through tonight. And next week, she's actually going to pretend that I'm the seller, and she's going to present to me how she would present her listing presentation.
Oh, I like that idea.
That was the cost of spending time with me today. So, so if any of you want to raise your hand in that way, that you want to, like over the next couple of weeks, want to put your presentation together and actually present it to me, we'll see what we can do about finding some time together. So, but it's, like coming to the table and being ready. So that means doing some homework. That means actually putting a CMA together. That means, like the whole 9 yards. And you would treat me as if I was a seller. So
Awesome.
if you're interested in that, you can, email me at that bcpcoaches@kw.com, and we'll see about setting up some time together. But it's the way, honestly, I was fortunate enough that people let me do that with them. And it made me a better agent. And it made me, it challenged me and it held me accountable. So I'll open that up to you guys if,
That's very thoughtful. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you guys for joining me this evening. I know it's tough at the end of the day, but I really appreciate all your
Kathy.
engagement, and it's nice to spend time with all of you.
Thank you, Kathy.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Bye,
Thank you so
everyone.
much.
Thank you.
Night.
Night, bye.
Yeah, good night.